words that begin or end or have the same middle sound. Counting syllables, counting sounds, cat, nap. Is that 2 words or 1? Catnip might be 1. Substitution, substituting one sound for another sound to come up with a whole new word. Blending and rhyming. All examples of phonemic awareness activities. Children who lack phonemic awareness have difficulty learning the relationship between letters and sounds, as well as applying those letter-sound correspondences to help them sound out unknown words. This was kind of a little bit of an aha moment for me, thinking back to how is it that there's a deficit in the phonological component of language, and it translates into what we see on paper and how we write on paper. It makes a lot of sense to me that if you're struggling with the sounds of language, and in school we ask you to make a connection between the sounds of language and the letters that we use to represent those sounds, if you're struggling with half of that equation, it makes a lot of sense to me that the other half of that equation is going to be more challenging. So, you know, I hope that that explains a little bit why it is so important to address phonological awareness deficits, not just working with this is the letter B and the B says B, not just working with the letters. Phonemic awareness skills can and must be directly and explicitly taught to children who lack this awareness. The good news about phonemic awareness is it is very responsive to remediation. So if you directly teach phonemic awareness skills to your students, they almost always make progress and frequently make rapid progress, which then again is something to keep in mind when you're testing. If they don't appear to have deficits in phonemic awareness, you have to ask if they have had some good instruction, because if they have had good instruction, their skills will look much better, and that doesn't mean that they did not come to earth with a lack of phonemic awareness skills. It just means that they were remediated. Okay. One area that they struggle with was phonemic awareness. Another area was symbolic information. They have difficulty processing symbolic information, which is letters and numbers. If I were to draw a picture of a tree on anything, I wouldn't have to tell you it was a tree. Almost regardless of how good or bad my drawing is, you would recognize it as a tree. There's a little bit more meaning behind it. But symbols, letters and numbers, mean nothing to anybody until somebody else teaches us the relationship between that letter and the sound that we are supposed to make when we see it. And then the third element is sequential information, difficulty retaining sequential information, such as the order of syllables in a word, or even sounds in a word, the sequence of the alphabet, days of the week, math facts, seasons of the year, even letters in their own name, keeping those in order. So, sequential symbols and symbolic sequences, that's the crux of our written language system. It is a sequence of symbols, hence the dramatic difficulty with reading and writing. Reading and writing aren't the only areas in which we see dyslexia, however. So, some academic examples of sequential symbols would be our spelling words, vocabulary words, words we have to read, math facts, learning our math facts, 2 + 3 = 5. For a lot of kids, they learn that by memorizing that sequence of words. Dyslexics aren't very talented at memorizing a sequence of words. For them to learn their math facts, it's more important for them to understand the meaning behind it, so that they can almost visualize 2 and 3 is 5 altogether. Some non-academic examples that we might see in our kids who are struggling with dyslexia, perhaps they have more trouble than their sisters, brothers, and peers in learning their address or phone number. Warning signs of dyslexia. In preschool, we might see these children talking later than most children, pronouncing words incorrectly, like biscotti, or flip-flopping some sounds or syllables, lawn lower instead of lawn mower. They struggle with rhyming, have trouble learning their alphabet, numbers, colors, shapes. The other thing I see in these kids is the non-dyslexic or even the mildly dyslexic child is fascinated by the letters in their own name. When they start to recognize their name, they start to see their letters in other words. And they start to, oh, apple, that's like Anne, you know, because they saw that, they see those letters. And the dyslexic child doesn't necessarily care, not so interested, doesn't float their boat. So with these weaknesses, though, I wanted to say, who might be the first person in your school to test a child and start to see some of these early red flags of dyslexia? Kindergarten teacher? Certainly. Speech pathologists. A lot of times the speech pathologist sees these kids before they even enter school through child find if they've had some speech delays. And a lot of intervention with speech pathology is phonemic awareness. So a lot of times they make a lot of growth there, and then they go back to the classroom, a year or so goes by, and now we're seeing reading problems. So a history of speech-language delays is a very, very big red flag, and something that I have always wanted to partner more with speech pathologists so that we could start to identify these kids earlier. Additional preschool dilemmas. Spelling and writing his or her name. A lot of children can write their name very well before they even enter kindergarten. Telling and retelling a story in the correct sequence. Separating sounds in words, blending sounds to make words. This is rather advanced kindergarten or preschool skills, but kindergarten through 4th grade, they're struggling to make that letter-sound connection. Decoding words and spelling, decoding single words and spelling phonetically. Reading and spelling errors would include these sorts of errors. Letter reversals. A lot of people say that kids will grow out of the letter reversal thing, and that's true to some degree. But if you or a parent feels as though you have given a pretty good shot at trying to help this child eliminate letter reversals and they are still having trouble, that's a big red flag for you. Other children have trouble with letter reversals because their attention doesn't support that level of attention to detail. But with some good explicit instruction, they can self-correct. The dyslexic continues to struggle even with some good explicit instruction. Word reversals, inversions, M for W, U for N. Sometimes you have to be a little creative to try to and ask yourself, what were they thinking? What letter should have been there? Does it have anything in common with the letter they wrote? Because it's not just BD. You know, there's a lot of reversals, inversions. Transpositions, felt for left, was for saw. Substitutions, house for home. The and the and They confuse small words. They rely on guessing and their childhood stories memorized. All right, some more kindergarten through 4th grade dilemmas. Confusing number sequences and arithmetic signs. Adding when they should subtract. I really wish these kids would just from the get-go pick up their highlighter, go through the whole page, highlight all the addition signs, do them first, then go back and do the subtraction problems. They have trouble remembering their math facts. A lot of these kids can hang on through addition and subtraction math facts, 2 plus 3 equals 5, but it's difficult for them, and you can see the struggle. Their parents spend a little bit more time on this than the other parents. But when they hit multiplication, that's when it really falls apart for them, because now we change one word in that sequence of words, 2 plus 3, we change it to 2 times 3, and we have a new answer. And so that's another, around 3rd, 4th grade when they really have to learn their multiplication facts, a lot of times we just really see their math scores plummeting. Oh, so they can't remember the math facts. They struggle to plan, organize, and manage time, materials, and tasks. That's because these things are sequential. You know, you go into your bedroom and you have to clean it. Well, what's the first thing you should do? That's usually the first step is usually the hardest step to identify and accomplish. And the first step is the first step in a sequence. And so these kids struggle with those things because they are sequential in nature. Awkward pencil grip. I'm not exactly sure what the story is with the awkward pencil grip, but I feel very confident in telling you I know what the problem is with the poor handwriting. Handwriting is a sequential activity. We start someplace, we go someplace else, and we finish up. And they struggle with the first step and so forth. But awkward pencil grip is definitely common, and it's worth correcting early. 5th through 8th grade difficulties, generally reading below grade level, but not always. Some of them have developed amazing compensatory skills. So they may not be reading below grade level, but they are probably reading slowly, maybe not able to read fast enough to support their academic expectations. Their spelling is probably pretty poor, and they probably avoid writing. They make letter sequence errors, soiled for solid, left for felt. They rely a lot on context clues and guessing. They have trouble discerning prefixes, suffixes, root words, and other reading and spelling strategies. A lot of us, whether we know it or not, may see a word that has, a word like unwillingly. That's apparently a rather long word because it has a prefix and 2 suffixes. A lot of us, without really knowing, kind of slough off all that superfluous letters, and we recognize the root word as will and put it all back together. A lot of times dyslexics just see that string of letters, and it's a long word to them, and it's hard. They will spell the same word differently on the same page. And you think to yourself, why not spell it the same way? Why not refer to the first way you spelled it? Or if you think you spelled it correctly the second time, why didn't you correct it the first time? Why do you leave it like that? It's not a matter of laziness. It's just really a matter of of struggling so much with the symbolic element of language that connection isn't really there, that they've written that word before and they've written it in a different fashion. And now we're having trouble with word problems in math. It breaks my heart because I believe these children generally are actually quite talented math students. But we put a lot of emphasis on memorizing our math facts, and then we think that they are doing poorly in math because they can't read the math instructions or the math word problems, and they start to identify themselves as not good at math. More 5th through 8th grade dilemmas. Illegible handwriting, still the awkward pencil grip. And then, at this point, that awkward pencil grip is becoming a physical problem. Their awkward pencil grip is an inefficient pencil grip, requiring more energy from their arm and muscles. And they're the kids sitting there shaking their hand in the aisle because they've been pinching it so much. Difficulty with written composition. They avoid writing for a whole host of reasons. Slow and poor recall of math facts still. Comprehension is now becoming a problem. Not listening comprehension, reading comprehension. And it's not really even reading comprehension. It's reading that is keeping them from reading accurately enough to comprehend what was written. By 5th through 8th grade, our dyslexics may be having trouble with non-literal language, idioms, jokes, proverbs, slang. That probably links back to an earlier speech-language delay. It can also be connected with decreased exposure to print, where we have the opportunity to read more of these things and think about them. If we're, just in running speech, speech moves on and we don't have the opportunity to think about them. So we may be missing opportunities to experience these things, and that might be why we struggle more than the non-dyslexic peer. High school and college students read slowly with many inaccuracies, spelling incorrectly. All of these things are just perpetuating. They will avoid reading and writing tasks. But here's something kind of new, trouble summarizing and outlining. It's now critical that we can do that. Difficulty learning a foreign language. More so my experience is that by this age, their difficulty is more with the written form of the foreign language. High high school and college students continue to